Rain hammered against the windows the night everything shattered. Elias Ward sat on the edge of his couch, cradling his burning son in his arms, listening to Noah's weak breaths while the phone in his hand rang and rang into an empty void. His wife should have been there. Any mother would have been there. Yet Marissa had vanished the moment their child needed her most. Then her only message came through. "I'm busy. Don't bother me." Something inside Elias cracked. Out of desperation, he opened the location tracker they had installed years ago, back when trust still meant something. The glowing dot on the map didn't lead to her office, or to a hospital, or anywhere a wife and mother should be. It led to a luxury apartment across town, a place Elias had never heard of, but someone else clearly had. And in that moment, he knew this night was only the beginning. "Tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this." Elias barely slept after that night. Even when Noah's fever finally dropped to a safer number and the boy drifted into an exhausted sleep at the hospital, Elias remained awake, replaying everything in his mind. Marissa's short, cutting message, the pulsating blue dot on the map, the address he had memorized against his will. It haunted him. The way the letters of that street name seemed to burn themselves into the inside of his eyelids. By morning, the world outside the hospital window glowed with a soft gray light, the kind that usually made him feel grounded, hopeful even. But today, it only deepened the ache in his chest. Marissa still hadn't appeared. A nurse with kind eyes approached to check Noah's vitals. She glanced around before quietly asking, "Will his mother be joining us soon?" The question struck harder than it should have. Elias forced a breath. She had a work emergency last night. The lie tasted sour, but the alternative, admitting he had no idea where his wife had spent the night, felt too heavy to speak aloud. When the nurse walked away, Elias pressed his palms to his face. He didn't cry. He refused to. Crying would mean accepting something had already broken. Hours passed before his phone buzzed with a new message. His pulse leaped with a sudden, stupid hope. Marissa. Maybe she had an explanation. Something reasonable. Something human. But the message wasn't from her. It was from Caleb, his closest friend since college. A man who had seen Elias through the awkward years, the early marriage years, and now, the unraveling ones. "You, home," Elias responded. "Hospital?" "Noah had a fever. High." A moment later, Caleb replied, "You need anything?" Elias stared at the message for a long time. There were plenty of things he needed answers. Clarity, peace, but none of those were items a friend could hand over. He settled for, "No thanks." Noah stirred beside him, mumbling softly. Elias leaned closer, brushing the boy's curls back. "It's okay, buddy. Dad's right here." He wished Marissa were there to hear those words. He wished she felt the weight of them. By noon, Noah was cleared to return home. Elias carried him out to the parking lot, the child's small arms wrapped around his neck. It should have been a moment shared, two parents bringing their son home, relieved and united. But the back seat of the car felt emptier than usual. Back at the house, everything looked the same, but felt different. The faint scent of Marissa's perfume still lingered in the hallway, but instead of warmth, it brought a strange chill. Elias settled Noah into his bedroom and watched his son fall asleep again, then walked into the living room, closing the door with a softness that belied the storm in his chest. He picked up his phone and called Marissa again, straight to voicemail. He tried once more. Voicemail. His jaw tightened. "Where are you?" he whispered into the quiet house. "Why aren't you here?" A knock at the front door cut through the silence. Elias opened it to find Caleb standing there, holding two coffees and wearing an expression Elias couldn't quite read. "I figured you might need this," Caleb said, stepping inside. Elias exhaled. "Thanks." Caleb scanned the empty living room. She didn't show. "No. Since last night. No." Caleb set the coffee on the table and crossed his arms. "Look, I'm not trying to start anything, but something's off. You know that, right?" Elias didn't respond. He just stared at the floor. the hardwood blurring slightly as tension built in his chest. I've seen her around town, Caleb continued carefully. Different places, different hours, and man, she hasn't looked happy. Not happy with who? Elias asked quietly. Caleb hesitated. That's what worries me. Elias nodded once, a tight motion. I know she's been distant. I know she's been working late. But Noah was sick. Caleb, he was burning up, and she didn't even come home. Elias, Caleb said slowly, a woman who still feels connected to her family wouldn't disappear on a night like that. The words landed like stones in Elias's stomach. He braced his hands against the counter, breathing deeply. I keep trying to think of reasons, logical reasons. Maybe she really was stuck at work. Maybe she fell asleep. Maybe her phone died. Caleb shook his head. You don't believe that. Elias didn't. Not anymore. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the screenshot from last night, the location pin glowing on an address he didn't recognize. He held it out to Caleb. Caleb looked at it, then looked at Elias, concern deepening. That's not her office. You know that. I know. And you didn't go there. Elias swallowed. No. Noah needed me. Caleb nodded slowly, as if confirming something unspoken. You did the right thing. But this isn't nothing. And you deserve the truth. Truth. The words sliced through him. Did he really want it? Because truth rarely came without blood. Hours later, just as the sun began to sink behind the houses, the front door opened. Marissa stepped inside, wearing a pencil skirt and blouse that were too wrinkled for someone supposedly leaving work. Her makeup was smudged. And worst of all, she didn't look worried. Not even surprised. Oh, she said lightly when she saw Elias. You're home early. Elias stared at her, as if seeing a stranger. Noah had a fever of 103, he said softly. Marissa blinked, but didn't rush to the boy's room, didn't drop her bag, didn't show the panic any mother would. Instead, she sighed, almost irritated. I told you I was busy. Busy where? Elias asked. Work, she said automatically. You weren't at work. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You sent one message. You ignored every call. Noah was shaking, crying for you, and you didn't come home. Then I checked the tracker. Marissa froze. There it was, the crack in her expression, small but undeniable. You tracked me, she asked, suddenly defensive. You disappeared. Elias replied. While our son was sick, she looked away. I fell asleep at the office. You weren't at your office. That was when she broke eye contact completely, moving past him into the kitchen, her tone sharpening. I don't have time for this conversation. I'm exhausted. Elias followed her with his gaze, disbelief, tightening his chest. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't devastated. She wasn't even lying. Well, a mother who cared would have run to her child. A wife who cared would have run to him. Noah's weak voice echoed faintly from the bedroom. Mom, finally, Marissa reacted. She walked toward the room, but hesitated at the door, as if the guilt inside had to be swallowed first before she could step inside. Elias watched her. Something cold and heavy settled in him. This wasn't the woman he married. This wasn't the mother Noah deserved. And though he couldn't prove it yet, the truth whispered like a shadow at the edge of his mind. Marissa hadn't been alone last night. She hadn't been asleep. She hadn't been working. She had been with someone else. Someone who made her forget her own child needed her. That night, long after the house went still, Elias sat at the edge of his bed, staring into the dark. The silence around him felt unnatural, too quiet, too expectant. Something inside him warned that the fever Noah battled was nothing compared to the storm that was coming. And when it hit, it would burn hotter than anything they'd ever faced. The morning after Marissa returned, the house felt unnervingly calm, too calm, almost staged, like a set built for a scene that hadn't yet begun. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in soft strips, but the warmth didn't reach Elias. He sat at the kitchen table long before anyone else woke, His fingers curled around a mug he couldn't remember pouring. Coffee had gone cold, untouched. He kept replaying the night before. The wrinkled clothes, the stale perfume he didn't recognize, the hollow excuses. Something inside him had shifted. He wasn't just suspicious now, he was waiting for the truth to surface, for the mask to slip, because instinct whispered that Marissa wasn't who she used to be, and the woman who walked into their house last night was someone wearing her face, her voice, her name, but not her loyalty. Around 8, footsteps padded softly down the hallway. Noah appeared first, dragging his blanket, still looking fragile but no longer feverish. Elias forced a smile. "Morning, buddy." Noah climbed onto his lap and leaned in. "Mom home?" "Yeah," Elias whispered. "She's here," as if summoned. Marissa entered the kitchen moments later. Her hair was pulled up neatly, her makeup fixed, and she wore the calm, polished expression of someone beginning a new day. Except she had missed the most important hours of the previous night. "Morning," she said lightly. She kissed Noah's forehead, then flinched, as if only now remembering he'd been sick. "You feeling better?" Noah nodded. Elias watched her closely. Her eyes didn't linger on the boy. She didn't ask what the doctor said. She didn't apologize. She turned to grab a glass, and something small slipped from her purse, just barely, just for a second. A slip of paper, folded twice, with a faint scent Elias recognized from her clothes last night. He bent subtly to pick it up. It was a receipt from an upscale restaurant. 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, timestamp 11:28 p.m. Marissa's breath hitched when she saw what he held. Her reaction was small, too small, but Elias caught it. "You went out to eat," Elias said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "Last night. You weren't at the office. That's an old receipt." She lied instantly, too quickly. "It's dated yesterday." She hesitated, then rolled her eyes. "Fine. I grabbed a late dinner with coworkers. I didn't think it mattered. You didn't pick up your phone while your son was in the hospital," Elias said, keeping his voice steady. "That matters." Marissa stiffened. "You're overreacting." Before he could respond, Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can I have pancakes?" Elias exhaled slowly. "Sure, buddy." He stood to cook, but his eyes stayed fixed on Marissa. Her defensiveness, her sharpness, they weren't random. They were cover, shields. And Elias had been married long enough to know that a person only built shields when they were hiding a battlefield behind them. While he cooked, his thoughts churned. He wasn't a man prone to paranoia, but now he saw dots forming patterns. Little things, each insignificant alone, but together, painting a picture he didn't want to look at. Marissa returning late from work for weeks, her phone suddenly locked with a new passcode. The expensive clothes, she said, were on sale, her sudden irritation at small questions. And last night, the moment that had changed everything, a location pin glowing from a luxury apartment across town. Elias plated Noah's pancakes, set them on the table, and finally said, "Marissa, we need to talk." She didn't look up. "About what?" "You know what." She sighed impatiently. "I don't have energy for this right now." "Then, when?" Elias asked. "When will you have energy to explain where you were while your child was burning with fever?" Her eyes flashed. "Stop guilt-tripping me." Elias felt his heart squeeze, but he forced himself to remain calm. "I'm not guilt-tripping you. I'm asking for honesty." Silence stretched between them. Marissa finally said, "We'll talk tonight. I have to get to work." Work. The word twisted painfully. She left without touching her breakfast. After she drove away, Elias sat at the table, staring at the empty chair across from him. He needed perspective, someone who wasn't drowning in emotion. He sent Caleb a message. "Can you stop by?" Caleb arrived within 20 minutes. His expression, serious from the doorway. "You look rough," he said. "I feel worse," Elias replied. They sat. Elias told him about the receipt, the look on Marissa's face, everything leading up to it. Caleb listened. jaw tightening. Man, this is not good. I know. Caleb leaned forward. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I think she's lying. A lot. Elias nodded slowly. I think so too, but knowing and accepting were different things. Look, Caleb said, lowering his voice. I saw something yesterday I didn't tell you. I didn't want to pile on, but I saw her car parked at a house on Rosemont Avenue. Elias's heart stopped. Rosemont Avenue. Yeah. Caleb pulled out his phone and showed a picture. Marissa's car was unmistakable, parked neatly in front of a modern apartment building, the same building Elias had seen on the map. And you're sure she wasn't working there? Caleb asked carefully. She's never mentioned it, Elias whispered. And the dress she wore last night? Caleb hesitated. It wasn't office attire. Elias shut his eyes. The evidence was stacking too neatly. Still, a part of him clung to hope. He needed to believe there was some explanation that didn't involve betrayal. But hope felt thinner every minute. Later that afternoon, while Noah napped again, Elias went into the living room to tidy up and noticed Marissa's phone charger had fallen behind the couch. When he bent to pick it up, something else caught his eye. Her phone, wedged into the cushions. He hesitated. He wasn't the kind of man who snooped, but trust wasn't a blanket you wrapped around someone blindly. It was something earned, shared, nurtured, and something in him knew that Marissa hadn't been nurturing anything except distance. He picked up the phone. It was locked, but a notification glowed on the screen before it dimmed. A text banner, just a preview. Last night was worth it. The world tilted. His knees nearly gave out. Worth it. 2 words, but they said everything. Worth leaving her sick child. Worth lying to her husband. Worth disappearing into another man's arms. Elias set the phone down, chest tight. He walked to the window, gripping the frame just to steady himself. Outside, children played on bikes, a dog barked, a neighbor watered their garden. Normal life continued, unbothered. Inside him, something collapsed. By the time Marissa returned that evening, Elias had rehearsed a dozen ways he could confront her. Cold fury, quiet questions, proof laid out on the table. But when she walked through the door, humming softly, as if she lived in a different reality entirely, Elias found he couldn't speak at all. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. We still talking. If you're ready, Elias said, voice tight. She brushed past him, heading toward the bedroom. I'm taking a shower first. Long day. The door clicked shut. Elias stared at the closed door. He realized then that he didn't need her confession. The truth had already been written in her absence, her lies, her eyes. And tonight, for the first time, he whispered aloud the thought that had been haunting him since the location pin appeared. She's with someone else. I know it. I just need to prove it. He didn't yet understand that the proof he sought would break more than just their marriage. It would break the illusion he had been living in for years. The evening stretched long after Marissa's shower began, the sound of running water echoing faintly through the house like a reminder of everything unspoken. Elias stood in the hallway, hands pressed to his temples as steam slipped out from under the bathroom door. The scent of her shampoo, once comforting, now felt like a veil hiding something rotten underneath. He couldn't confront her, not yet, not without more than a text preview, a receipt, and a location pin. Because Marissa was the type who would twist a question into an attack, turn the smallest doubt into a reason to blame him. Elias had seen the shift in her, the way she snapped faster, deflected harder, built up walls where there used to be windows. If he accused her too early, she wouldn't break. She'd bury the truth deeper. He needed clarity, proof, something undeniable. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she gave him a tired look, as if he were the one causing trouble. I'm exhausted, Elias. Can this wait until tomorrow? He nodded because he already knew the conversation wouldn't happen either way. She would delay, deflect, and disappear again. Sure, tomorrow. She didn't see the frustration tightening his jaw, or maybe she did and didn't care. She went to bed without checking on Noah. The absence cut deeper than any lie. The next morning was worse. Marissa left early again, rushing out with barely a goodbye. Elias watched from the doorway as her car pulled away, feeling like a man watching his life unravel thread by thread. Once her taillights vanished, he returned inside with a heaviness that settled deep in his bones. Noah was still asleep, giving Elias a few hours alone with his thoughts' dangerous company. He needed help. He called Caleb. Caleb answered on the second ring. "How bad is it?" Elias exhaled shakily. "Bad enough that I need to know the truth." There was a pause. "Say it. I think she's cheating." Caleb didn't react with surprise. "Okay, what do you need?" "Eyes," Elias said. "Someone who doesn't have my emotions clouding their judgment. You want me to follow her?" Elias hesitated, guilt pricking him. But guilt had no place when a child was involved. When trust had already been fractured. Yes. Just until we know what's going on. Caleb didn't question it further. "Text me her schedule. I'll take the day off." Relief washed through Elias. Fragile but necessary. "Thank you. That's what friends are for, man." When he hung up, Elias felt a strange mixture of shame and resolve. He hated the idea of spying, but Marissa wasn't leaving him a choice. She had locked herself behind lies. He wasn't breaking trust by trying to uncover the truth she already had. Later that morning, while Noah played with blocks on the living room floor, Elias sat at the kitchen island, sorting through the month's credit card statements. He wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Marissa was careful, methodical, but the numbers still told a story. A familiar restaurant name appeared. A high-end one. One they hadn't visited in years because they couldn't justify the cost. Elias traced the charges with a trembling finger. 2 dinners in the last 3 weeks. 1 bar tab expensive. A boutique clothing store receipt. Even pricey. When had she bought these things? He closed his eyes, remembering the dress she wore the night she disappeared. Sleek, new. Not the kind of outfit she'd buy for work. Not the kind she'd buy for him. Noah's gentle voice pulled him back. "Dad, the tower fell." Elias looked at his son, innocent and unaware, and his heart twisted. "It's okay, buddy. We can build another." He sat with him, helping reconstruct the tower. For a few moments, everything felt normal again. The kind of simple joy he used to believe would carry their family through anything. But now the foundation felt as fragile as the blocks in Noah's hands. By noon, Caleb sent a message. "I'm in position." Elias's pulse quickened. He told himself he didn't want bad news, but deep down, he knew the truth wouldn't surprise him anymore. It would only confirm what his heart had already accepted. An hour passed before Caleb texted again. "She left the office, not heading home. I'll keep following." Elias tried to keep busy, but every buzz of his phone jolted him. Finally, a new message came. "She stopped at a pharmacy, bought makeup, quick in and out, then, now heading north, toward the more affluent part of town, toward Rosemont Avenue." Elias's breath hitched. Another message. She turned into the same apartment building. The world fell away beneath him. He forced himself to call Caleb, voice low and strained. "You're sure?" "I'm looking at her right now," Caleb said. "She parked in the garage." "I can't get inside without being obvious." Elias pressed his fingers to his forehead. "It's okay. That's enough." Caleb hesitated. "There's more." Elias's heart pounded. "What?" A man came out to meet her. Everything inside him froze. He opened the garage door from the inside. Caleb continued, voice tightening. "Tall guy, expensive suit." They hugged. A long silence filled the line. Hugged, not professional, not friendly, familiar, intimate. Elias steadied himself against the wall. Did she look happy? Caleb sighed. "Yeah, man." She looked very happy. Elias didn't remember ending the call. His body moved on instinct, lowering himself to the couch before his legs gave out. He sat there, staring at nothing, his mind a storm of disbelief, anger, heartbreak, and worst of all, clarity. The lie wasn't a lie anymore. It was real. Marissa was with someone else. He spent the afternoon in a fog, not crying, not shouting, just unraveling quietly. Piece by piece, he cleaned the kitchen without seeing it. Folded laundry he didn't remember carrying, checked Noah's temperature repeatedly, even though it was normal. When Noah napped again, Elias walked into the bedroom he once shared with Marissa. He stood at her dresser, opening drawers with trembling fingers. He didn't know what he hoped to find, maybe nothing. Maybe something undeniable. In the second drawer, beneath her sweaters, he found a small velvet pouch. Inside it lay a pair of earrings, diamond studs, elegant, expensive. Not something he ever bought her. Alongside them was a handwritten note, short, without a signature, "For when you're with me." Elias stumbled back. The room spun. This wasn't suspicion anymore, or guesswork, or paranoia. This was betrayal spelled out in crystal clarity. He sat on the bed, clutching the earrings so tightly they left marks in his palm. His breathing grew shallow, barely controlled. He whispered to the empty room, "Why would you do this? Why now, when Noah needs you most?" No answer came, only the silence of a marriage already crumbling. That evening, Marissa returned home early, something she hadn't done in months. Elias watched her from the kitchen doorway, searching for guilt in her face. He found none. She dropped her purse and said casually, "I'm thinking of getting a new car. Mine's too old." Elias swallowed hard. "Where were you today?" "Work," she answered too quickly. He stared at her. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't hesitate. Her lies rolled off her tongue so easily it chilled him. That was the moment Elias understood something vital. He wasn't losing his wife. He had already lost her. Now he needed to learn why and how far the betrayal went, and for that, he needed proof she couldn't run from. Even if the truth shattered, everything left standing. The next morning arrived with an eerie stillness, the kind that made Elias feel as if the world were holding its breath. Marissa had left early again, offering only a brief, distracted kiss on Noah's forehead before slipping out the door. Noah barely stirred. Elias didn't even receive a goodbye. He wasn't sure she meant to give one. As the sound of her engine faded, Elias sat at the dining table with a sense of grim determination settling into him. Yesterday's discoveries, the earrings, the note, the hug Caleb had witnessed, were no longer isolated signs. They were pieces of a truth he could no longer avoid. He couldn't keep drifting in uncertainty. He needed the whole story, not just fragments. And if Marissa wouldn't give it to him, he would uncover it himself. After dropping Noah off at school, Elias drove straight to Caleb's office. It was an old converted warehouse building, half full of contractors and half full of Caleb's property management team. Caleb was outside when Elias arrived, leaning against his truck with a folder under one arm. "You ready for this?" Caleb asked, studying him closely. "No," Elias admitted, "but I need it." Caleb nodded and handed him the folder. "I did some digging last night, more than just following her." Inside were printed photos, real estate records, and a name circled in red ink. "Dorian Hale." "Who is he?" Elias asked, though something about the name felt familiar. "He's an architect," Caleb said. "Owns a firm downtown. Used to work at a big company before starting his own. Makes a lot of money. Drives a car worth more than my house." The uneasy familiarity sharpened. "I've heard of him." "Probably." Caleb motioned to the photos. "He's on social media a lot. Magazine interviews, community events. Women talk about him like he's some kind of celebrity." Elias flipped through the photos. Dorian was indeed polished, handsome, dressed in tailored suits. He seemed like the type who had never known hardship, the type who carried charm like a weapon and used it liberally. But beneath the curated smile in each photo, there was something predatory, something too polished. "He has a reputation," Caleb continued carefully. "Rumors, affairs, problems with boundaries. A few marriages fell apart because of him." Elias felt something cold crawl through him. You're saying he targets married women. Caleb sighed. I'm saying he doesn't care who gets hurt as long as he gets what he wants. It made sense. Too much sense. Do you know how Marissa met him? Elias asked. Caleb shook his head. Not yet, but I'm working on it. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. Actually, this might answer your question. He turned the screen toward Elias. A picture of Marissa leaving a downtown cafe with a group of colleagues taken months ago. At the edge of the group stood Dorian, smiling at someone off camera. The caption from a coworker read, Team lunch with the new consultant. Elias felt his stomach drop. Consultant. Apparently, her company hired him for a project, Caleb said. That's how it starts. Elias swallowed hard. His mind raced through the past months. Late nights, sudden wardrobe changes, rushing to the gym, new perfume. A transformation he thought was professional, now twisted into something else. How long? Elias asked, voice cracking. Caleb hesitated. If I had to guess, weeks, maybe months. The world seemed to tilt. Months. Months of lies. Months of pretending to be exhausted from work while she was meeting another man. Months of coming home to him, carrying someone else's scent. The betrayal deepened like a knife sinking into soft flesh. This isn't your fault, Caleb said, sensing Elias slip into silence. People like him. They're manipulators. They know how to find cracks and widen them. Elias squeezed his eyes shut. But I trusted her. I thought. We were struggling, sure. But I thought we were still us. That's the thing about people who cheat, Caleb said quietly. It's never about what you lacked. It's about what they stopped choosing. The words hit too close to home. Later that afternoon, Elias drove by the building on Rosemont Avenue not to confront, just to see. The structure was modern, all glass angles and dark metal, standing tall against the sky like a monument to wealth. He parked down the street, lowering his seat and observing from afar. Women entered, men exited. Luxury cars lined the underground garage. Elias felt small, unseen, replaceable. Was this where she went to feel important, desired, alive? He imagined her laughter echoing down the hallways, her head tilted toward Dorian, her hand on his arm. He imagined her stepping into his apartment, choosing him over her family. The images burned. After nearly 20 minutes, Elias forced himself to drive away. This wasn't the time to crumble. He still had a child depending on him, and he still needed answers. When he returned home, he found something new. Marissa's laptop left open on the kitchen counter. It was rare she kept it guarded lately. Locked, closed, protected. But today, it seemed she had rushed out too quickly to hide it. Elias hesitated. He didn't want to be the person who searched through another's private life. But she had already crossed that line. Trust was a two-person contract, and Marissa had torn hers apart without hesitation. He approached the laptop. The screen was on, an email window open. His breath caught. The sender's name, Dorian Hale. The subject line, tonight. Elias's hand trembled as he clicked. The email wasn't long, just enough. Same place, same time. Last night was unbelievable. You're everything I imagined. Elias stepped back like he'd been struck. Everything he imagined. Same place, same time. The earrings, the restaurant receipt, the text preview, the hug in the garage, the location pin. Now it all aligned, the puzzle complete. He clutched the edge of the counter, fighting for breath. His vision blurred, his chest tightened. He couldn't tell if he wanted to scream or collapse. In that moment, something in him changed, not broke, but hardened. He whispered to himself, I need more proof. The kind nobody can deny. Because this wouldn't end in an argument, or a confession, or an apology, too late to matter. This would end in the truth, exposed, undeniable, irreversible. That night, while Noah slept peacefully, Elias sat alone in the darkened living room. The house was quiet, Except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the hallway clock, he opened a notebook and began writing dates, times, receipts, phone behavior, tracking pings, emails, a record of betrayal, every detail cataloged with painful precision, not because he wanted revenge, but because he needed to protect Noah, because he needed to protect himself, because Marissa had already abandoned their family emotionally, and soon, he feared, she would try to abandon them legally. He was building a shield, preparing for the inevitable war. Around midnight, Marissa returned. Her clothes looked different from the morning, too elegant, too deliberate, and her hair smelled faintly of a cologne Elias recognized from the earrings pouch, Dorian's scent. She didn't turn on the light, didn't check on Noah, didn't even notice Elias sitting in the dark. She simply slipped quietly into the bedroom, humming softly. Humming. Elias closed his notebook, heart pounding. He now knew the man's name, his profession, his reputation, his connection to Marissa, and he knew one more thing. The betrayal was nowhere near over. This was only the beginning. The night before had been unbearable. But the morning that followed was worse. Elias woke with a weight in his chest, a heaviness that made it difficult even to breathe. The air in the bedroom felt stale, as though betrayal had soaked into the walls, into the sheets, even into the silence between him and the woman sleeping beside him. Marissa didn't stir when he got out of bed. She rarely did anymore. She slept deeply after her late nights, too deeply, too comfortably, like someone who had poured her energy into the wrong life, the wrong man, the wrong home. Her back was turned to him, her breath slow and even. She looked peaceful, untouched by guilt. Elias stared at her for several seconds before quietly stepping into the hallway. Today, he promised himself, would be different. Today, he would stop hoping she would choose them again. Today, he would follow the truth, no matter how much it hurt. But the day had its own plans. By mid-morning, after breakfast and a few soft coughs, Noah seemed unusually tired. Elias kept checking on him, but the boy insisted he wanted to play. For a moment, Elias considered taking him to the park, something normal, something grounding. Instead, Noah's face paled suddenly, and his forehead grew warm beneath Elias's palm. "No," Elias whispered. "Not again." He quickly fetched the thermometer. The numbers blinked 101, 4, rising. A cold dread crawled through him. The last fever had terrified him enough, but this time, the mere idea of another hospital visit, while Marissa stayed, God only knows where, was enough to unsteady his breathing. He carried Noah to the couch. "Rest here, bud. I'll get your medicine." Noah nodded weakly, curling into a ball. Elias's hands shook as he reached for the fever reducer in the cabinet. Memories of the previous hospital stay crashed over him. How small Noah had looked under the harsh white lights. How helpless Elias had felt waiting alone. A mother should have been there. A wife should have been there. But she wasn't. And Elias was terrified she wouldn't be this time either. He dialed her number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. His pulse thundered in his ears. He sent a message. "Call me. It's urgent. Noah's sick again." He waited. 5 minutes? 10? Nothing. The fear that something would happen to Noah while Marissa was lying in another man's arms was enough to make his vision blur with anger and desperation. Caleb's name appeared instinctively in his thoughts. He dialed. Caleb answered immediately. "You okay?" "No," Elias said sharply. "Noah's fever is back. I'm coming right now." "No, stay where you are." "I need you following Marissa." Caleb hesitated. "Elias, please." Elias whispered, "I need to know if she's with him again." A long pause. Then Caleb sighed. "I'll check." Elias hung up and returned to Noah, who had begun shivering. The boy's small frame trembled against the blanket. Elias wrapped his arms around him and rocked gently. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." But anger simmered beneath the fear. Where was she? 20 minutes later, Elias's phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. I'm at her office. Her car isn't here. Elias's stomach twisted. Another buzz. I'm heading toward Rosemont. Elias swallowed hard and wiped Noah's forehead with a cool cloth. The boy mumbled softly, eyes half shut. Elias kissed his hair, his heart squeezing painfully. He sent Caleb a single word. Update. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Then, she's here? Elias exhaled shakily, and, this time, Caleb called instead of texting. Elias answered immediately. Tell me. She walked into the building, Caleb said, voice low. Same guy met her in the garage. Same car. Same apartment. Elias closed his eyes. The worst part, Caleb continued. She looked happy, laughing, like she didn't have a care in the world. A silence filled the line, and she didn't respond to any of your messages, Caleb added, though they both knew the answer already. Elias felt something inside him fracture. Thank you, Caleb. That's all I need. You want me to stay? No. Go home. I've got it from here. He hung up before Caleb could argue. He pressed his forehead to the back of the couch, breathing through the agony twisting his chest. How could she stand in another man's arms while her son was lying sick and shaking? He tried to push the anger away, but it wouldn't leave. It surged, hot and relentless. She had chosen someone else over their child. Not once, not twice, but again. And now Elias understood, with devastating clarity, this wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice she'd made repeatedly. A choice she'd make again. Unless he stopped pretending. Noah whimpered softly. Elias turned instantly, kneeling by his side. It hurts, Noah whispered. I know, buddy, Elias murmured, lifting him gently. We're going to the hospital. There was no hesitation. Elias grabbed Noah's bag, a blanket, his insurance card, every motion swift but trembling. As he carried his son to the car, the world outside seemed cruelly bright. Birds chirped. Neighbors walked their dogs. A breeze rustled the leaves. Everything normal, except his life was crumbling. He buckled Noah in and drove. One hand on the wheel, one hand reaching back to touch the boy's knee whenever he could. At the hospital, familiar faces recognized them. A nurse rushed them into a room without delay. Questions followed: temperature, symptoms, medical history. Elias answered numbly, his eyes glued to Noah's small hand clenched around his. Is his mother on the way? A nurse asked. The question was gentle, routine, but it cracked something open inside him. She's unavailable, Elias said quietly. The nurse hesitated. We'll keep trying to reach her. You shouldn't have to do this alone. He swallowed. I know. But he was alone, and he would continue to be, because the woman who should have been there had abandoned them long before this fever. While he waited for test results, he sat in the chair beside Noah's bed, elbows on his knees, head bowed. Every minute felt like a reminder of how deeply he had been betrayed. He checked his phone again. Still no call. Still no message. Hours passed before Marissa finally responded. A single text, "What's going on? I'm busy. Busy." That one word pushed Elias past a threshold he didn't know existed. He stared at it until his eyes blurred. Then, slowly, deliberately, he turned off his phone. He didn't owe her explanations anymore. He didn't owe her attention. He didn't owe her his pain. He looked at Noah, pale but sleeping peacefully, and knew the truth. Marissa had already made her decision. And now, it was time for him to make his. Late that night, Noah finally stabilized. The doctor assured Elias they'd caught the fever early. He stayed until he was certain his son was safe, then carried him out to the car. As he drove home, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and blue, flickering across his face like distant memories. He wasn't shattered anymore. He wasn't confused. He wasn't hoping for change. He was focused, resolved, determined. When he pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. except for a single lamp in the living room. Marissa was home. He didn't care. He laid Noah gently in his bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "I've got you. I'm not going anywhere." Then he stepped into the hallway. Marissa's silhouette was visible through the living room door. She was on the couch, legs crossed casually, scrolling her phone as if nothing in the world required her attention. Elias stood there for a moment, watching her. Tomorrow, he would take the first real step. Tomorrow, he would gather the last pieces of evidence. Tomorrow, he would begin preparing for the end, because after tonight, there was no saving what she had destroyed. The next morning dawned with a bitter quiet, the type that settles over a house where trust has already been drained from the walls. Elias had barely slept. He kept waking to check Noah's breathing, his temperature, the rise and fall of his small chest. Every few hours, he would glance at the empty space beside him in bed, where Marissa used to sleep, and feel the same hollow ache pulse through him, an ache that had taken root and was now spreading deeper, darker. Marissa hadn't come to the hospital. She hadn't called. She hadn't asked about Noah. Not once. She had simply returned home later than usual the previous night, smelling of the same cologne Elias had found on the earrings. She dropped her purse on the counter, glanced at him on the couch, and said, "We really need to talk tomorrow," as if feigned concern could patch a dying marriage. Now. Morning light crept across the living room floors as Elias sat with a cup of coffee he couldn't taste. Across from him, Marissa entered the kitchen wearing a crisp blouse and carefully applied makeup too carefully. She looked polished, confident, a woman who had rehearsed her lies in the mirror. Elias didn't say anything until she sat at the table. "We should talk now," he finally said. Marissa looked up, surprised he wasn't avoiding it. "Okay," she said lightly, as if this were a casual disagreement about chores. He studied her face. Once, he'd known every expression she wore, every little twitch, every nervous tell. Now she seemed like a character he couldn't read, someone performing a role she'd chosen without his consent. "Where were you yesterday?" he asked quietly. Marissa sighed dramatically. "Work. Work," Elias repeated. "The same work you disappeared into while your son was in the hospital." Her eyes narrowed. "I didn't disappear. I had things going on. Things more important than your child being sick." "There you go again," she snapped, pushing back from the table. "Always making everything dramatic. You're being manipulative." "Manipulative," Elias echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. "For asking where you were when Noah needed you." Marissa folded her arms, her posture rigid. "I told you my phone died. I didn't see your messages until late." That's not true." Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Because you texted me last night," and the battery icon said 78%. She froze, a small crack in her expression. Tiny but unmistakable. He pressed further. "Why didn't you call me back when you saw the messages?" "I was busy." "With what?" Elias asked. "Or, should I say with who?" Her jaw tightened. "I am not doing this. You're paranoid. You're projecting. You think because you're overwhelmed with parenting, you can blame me for everything you're feeling." Elias stared at her, stunned at how easily she turned the tables. The woman in front of him wasn't the Marissa he remembered. She was sharper, colder, almost hostile. She didn't look like someone hiding guilt. She looked like someone protecting a new life she'd already chosen. Still, he kept his voice calm. "Show me your phone." Marissa's head snapped up. "Excuse me. If you have nothing to hide," Elias said evenly. "Show me your phone." She recoiled as if he'd slapped her. "Absolutely not. That is a violation of my privacy." "You violated this marriage." "That's not true," she shouted. "You're acting insane." Elias said nothing. He simply held out his hand again. Marissa's lip trembled not with emotion but with anger. "I'm going to be late for work." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. Elias sat alone at the table, absorbing the silence she left behind. Her refusal wasn't a denial, it was confirmation. After dropping Noah at school, his fever now stable, but still watched closely. Elias drove straight to Caleb's place. His friend was waiting outside again, as if he expected Elias to come. "Rough morning?" Caleb asked. Elias let out a hollow laugh. "You have no idea." Caleb opened the passenger door of his truck. "Get in. You need to see something." They drove to his office, and once inside, Caleb locked the door. On the desk were several envelopes, a flash drive, and a small manila folder. "This," Caleb said, tapping the folder, "is from a friend of mine, in private security." He did some digging on Dorian. Elias opened it. His stomach dropped. Affairs plural. Multiple complaints filed by spouses. One company terminated his contract after inappropriate relationships with married employees. 2 women left their marriages after being involved with him. Another filed a harassment complaint but later withdrew it. "He doesn't just break marriages," Caleb said grimly. "He hunts them." Elias stared at the papers, feeling a mix of fury and disbelief. "And she got involved with someone like him." Caleb nodded. "There's more." He handed Elias the flash drive. "What's on it?" "Security footage. From the parking garage at Rosemont. I had a connection pull the last week's worth." Elias's breath caught, and Caleb hesitated. "It's exactly what you think." Elias inserted the drive into Caleb's laptop. The screen flickered, then loaded a grainy but clear black and white video. There she was, Marissa, walking into the garage, wearing the same dress Elias had seen her in 2 nights ago. Her stride was confident, her smile wide, and then Dorian entered the frame, tall, expensively dressed, smug in a way that made Elias want to punch through the screen. Marissa walked straight into his arms. They kissed. Not a quick peck, not a hesitant touch. A full, intimate kiss, the type of kiss Elias hadn't seen from her in months. He felt the air leave his lungs, his chest constricting painfully. "She didn't just choose him," Elias whispered. "She forgot we existed." Caleb put a hand on his shoulder. "There's still more." Elias didn't look away from the screen. "What?" "A hotel receipt. From the night Noah first got sick." Caleb slid the envelope toward him. Inside was a printed invoice. 2 guests, 1 room. Check-in time, 8:54 p.m. Checkout. Almost noon the next day. Marissa had abandoned her son for a night in a hotel with another man. Elias didn't cry. He didn't shout. He simply stared, his expression frozen, hollow, stunned into silence by a truth so devastating it felt unreal. Finally, he whispered, "She was with him, while Noah was shivering in my arms." "Yes," Caleb said quietly. "She was, and she lied, over and over." "Yes." Elias pressed his hands into his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. The weight of betrayal was crushing, suffocating, unbearable. But beneath it, a cold resolve began to form, a clarity he hadn't felt before. "No more guessing," Elias said. "No more hoping she'll change. No more excuses." "What are you going to do?" Caleb asked. Elias opened his eyes. His voice was calm, steady, almost frighteningly composed. "I'm going to prepare, and she won't see it coming." He closed the laptop, placed the envelope into his jacket, and stood tall, taller than he had in weeks. For the first time since all of this began, Elias wasn't drowning. He was rising. Because now he knew the truth, all of it, undeniable, irrefutable. And soon, Marissa would know something too. She hadn't just risked her marriage. She had already destroyed it. Elias drove home with the folder on the passenger seat, its weight feeling heavier than anything he had ever carried. It wasn't just paper. It was the end of something he had spent years building. It was the burial of every memory he once held sacred. As he pulled into the driveway, he sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, trying to steady the tremor in his hands. Inside the house, silence greeted him again. The walls felt colder today, the air sharper, as if the house itself sensed the shift within him. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This wasn't fear or confusion. It was resolve. He put the folder on the dining table and opened it once more, not because he needed to see the contents again, but because he needed the pain one last time. A kind of cleansing, proof that he wasn't imagining things, proof that whatever he decided next wasn't impulsive or emotional, but justified. The video still played in his mind, Marissa, stepping into Dorian's embrace with the ease of someone who had done it many times before, the softness in her smile, the familiarity in their movements. She looked like a woman in love, or at least, a woman who had chosen someone else long before Elias realized he was losing her. He closed the folder. It was time to act. When Noah came home that afternoon, Elias forced himself to smile. His son didn't deserve to carry the weight of the adult world. He deserved normalcy, stability, warmth. "Daddy, can we watch the dinosaur show?" Noah asked, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Of course," Elias said, lifting him gently. "Anything you want." As Noah settled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Elias sat beside him. He watched his son's small face, illuminated by the TV glow, his curls falling over his forehead, the faint remnants of fever still making him a little sluggish. The thought of losing Noah even for partial custody sent a bolt of terror through Elias's chest. He whispered silently, "I won't let her take him. Not after everything she's done. Not after she abandoned him. Not after she lied to his face. Not after she built a life with someone else and left her child behind." He needed guidance. Someone with knowledge, experience, and precision. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he had saved earlier that morning. A woman answered. Harriet Dunn speaking. Her voice was steady, crisp, the kind of tone that belonged to someone who didn't lose cases. "Harriet, it's Elias Ward," he said. "Caleb gave me your number. I remember. You said you might call. Tell me what happened." Elias glanced at Noah, who was engrossed in the show, then stepped into the hallway, lowering his voice. "She's cheating," he said. "I have proof. A lot of proof. And she abandoned our son twice while he had a fever. She didn't even show up to the hospital." Harriet didn't gasp or murmur sympathetically. Her professionalism was almost comforting. "Are you seeking custody?" "Yes," Elias said without hesitation. "Full custody. Then, we need to build a case airtight enough to hold in any courtroom," Harriet replied. "I'll need all your evidence, the video, receipts, emails, screenshots, any pattern of neglect, and I need you to stay calm. Don't confront her yet. Don't accuse her. Let her continue behaving as she has been." Elias frowned. "Why?" "Because," Harriet said, "people who cheat often justify their choices by blaming the spouse. They'll say, 'You're controlling, paranoid, unstable. If you confront her too early, she'll change her behavior, clean up her patterns, delete messages, hide money. She'll become careful. And careful people are harder to prove guilty. So I just pretend nothing is happening. For now," she said. "Think of this as strategy, not surrender." Elias closed his eyes. He wasn't used to deception. It twisted his stomach. But he also understood the stakes. "Okay," he said finally. "What else should I do?" "Document everything," Harriet instructed. "Dates, times, behaviors, absences. And start preparing financially. Open a separate bank account if you haven't. Keep your spending measured. Judges look for stability." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Stability is all I've been clinging to, and it will serve you," Harriet said. "Now, one more thing. Yes, don't tell anyone else what you're planning, not even your friend Caleb. The fewer people who know, the cleaner the case will be." Elias nodded, even though she couldn't see. "Understood? Good. Call me tomorrow to schedule an appointment." And Elias, "Yes, you're doing the right thing. The court cares about children first. And from what you've told me, your son needs protection." Those words hit him harder than the evidence itself, because they were true. Elias hung up, returned to the living room, and sat next to Noah again. He brushed the boy's hair gently. feeling the fragile warmth of his forehead. Noah leaned into him instinctively. "Daddy, will you stay with me forever?" The question pierced Elias's heart. "Always," he whispered. "No matter what. No matter what Marissa did. No matter how ugly things became. No matter how many lies she told, he would not lose his son. He could tolerate heartbreak. He could survive betrayal. He could rebuild his life. But losing Noah? Impossible." Marissa came home later than usual. She entered quietly, dropping her heels near the door, humming under her breath again, a habit Elias noticed she'd picked up only recently. It wasn't a tune he recognized. It wasn't something she hummed when she was stressed or tired. It was something she hummed when she was fulfilled. He watched her from the couch. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair tousled in a way that didn't match a workday. She barely acknowledged him. "Hey," she said casually. "Long day." Elias kept his voice even. "Everything okay? Work is crazy. Deadlines." She walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge. "We should probably take a trip soon. Things feel tense." Tense. The word tasted like poison coming from her mouth. Elias forced a nod. "Maybe." She smiled vaguely, unaware her mask was transparent now. He noticed something else. Her phone vibrated on the counter, and she snatched it up instantly, angling the screen away. He said nothing, because Harriet was right. Let her keep digging her own grave. Marissa approached him, leaning down to place a soft kiss on his cheek. It felt foreign, wrong, like a gesture she thought a wife should give, not one she wanted to offer. "Good night," she murmured, touching his shoulder. "Good night." Elias replied. She walked down the hallway, humming again. Disappearing into the bedroom, Elias waited until he heard the door close before he let the calm facade slip. His jaw clenched, his hands shook. Harriet's voice echoed in his mind. "Let her show you who she truly is." Elias inhaled deeply. The truth was already showing, and now he was preparing not to win her back, not to salvage a broken marriage, but to protect the one thing worth fighting for. Tonight, he had taken the first step. Tomorrow, he would take another, because betrayal had a price, and soon, Marissa would pay every part of it. The next few days unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare. One Elias watched from a distance, detached but painfully aware of every crack widening in his marriage. He felt as if he were walking on a glass bridge, transparent, fragile, and threatening to shatter with every step he took. And yet, he kept walking, because now he had a mission. Now he had a strategy. Now he had Harriet Dunn, one of the most relentless divorce attorneys in the state, guiding him toward the truth he needed to expose. But even with that growing resolve, nothing prepared him for how boldly Marissa would begin unraveling. It started with the small things. She stopped pretending to care where she was going. She'd grab her keys, slip on her heels, and say vaguely, "Late meeting," or "I'll be home after dinner," without offering details. She no longer asked about Noah's day or checked whether his fever had returned. She barely looked at him. The boy she had once rocked to sleep every night had somehow become an afterthought. What changed most was how she treated Elias. There was a sharpness to her now, a superiority that seeped into her every word, every glance. She seemed to believe he didn't deserve answers, as if she had transcended the mundane responsibilities of family life and stepped into a world where she was adored, admired, chosen. A world where being a wife and mother felt like a weight she'd rather cast aside. On Wednesday evening, as Elias was making dinner, Marissa breezed through the door, wearing a champagne-colored dress he had never seen before. It clung to her in ways that screamed intention, confidence, seduction. None of it meant for him. She twirled once, in front of the mirror, by the entryway, adjusting the straps. "Too much?" she asked, not looking at him. He forced his voice steady. "For work," she smirked. "Networking event." Elias's chest tightened. He had studied her schedule meticulously. There was no networking event. But he said nothing. Not yet. Noah, sitting at the table coloring dinosaurs, looked up. "Mommy." Are you going to be here for bedtime? Marissa paused. It wasn't hesitation. It was annoyance. We talked about this, she said, voice cool. Mommy has a lot on her plate right now. Noah's eyes dimmed. But I miss you. Something flickered across Marissa's expression. Not guilt, irritation. I'll make it up to you, she said flatly, already turning away. Elias watched his son lower his head, shoulders drooping, something inside him twisted with sorrow and fury. He spoke gently. Noah, why don't you go wash your hands? Dinner's almost ready. Once the boy was out of earshot, Elias turned to Marissa. You could stay, he said quietly. Just tonight. He needs you. And down. Marissa rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic again. He's 6, Elias said, voice controlled. He asked you for one night. You're overreacting, she said, picking up her purse. Maybe if you didn't smother him so much, he wouldn't be so clingy. That was when Elias realized something fundamental. She didn't just resent him. She resented them both, him and Noah. The life they represented, the responsibilities she had been running from. He took a slow breath. Marissa, who is he? Her shoulders tensed. A moment frozen in time. Then she laughed a cold, dismissive sound. You're unbelievable. He didn't respond. She stepped into her heels and grabbed the doorknob. I'm not doing this. Not with you. And she walked out. The next morning, she didn't come home until nearly dawn. When she slipped quietly into bed, her hair mussed and makeup smudged, Elias pretended to be asleep. He lay there stiffly, barely breathing, listening to her steady, guiltless exhale beside him. Harriet's warning echoed in his mind. Let her reveal who she truly is. She was revealing it, piece by piece, and Elias was documenting all of it. Thursday afternoon brought another revelation, one that snapped something in him so cleanly it felt like a bone breaking. He was cleaning up the living room when Marissa's tablet lit up on the coffee table. It was synced to her emails, something she must have forgotten. Elias didn't want to invade her privacy, but the notification popped into full view before the screen dimmed again. Can't stop thinking about last night. Tonight again. Dorian. Elias stared at the words until they blurred. He didn't tap the message. He didn't need to. The intention was clear. The intimacy was clear. The betrayal was complete. He straightened slowly, breathing deeply, to avoid waking the anger burning beneath his ribs. Tonight again, she had seen Noah sick. She had heard him crying for her. She had watched her son need her. And she still chose someone else. The foundation of who she had once been crumbled in his mind. She wasn't the woman he married, not even close. She was someone who could lie with a straight face, laugh while her family fell apart, and walk into another man's arms while her child lay in a hospital bed. Something inside Elias turned to stone. No more denial, no more hesitation, no more waiting. It was time to solidify his next move. When Marissa arrived home that night late again, hair tousled again, cheeks flushed again, Elias greeted her with a calmness that surprised even him. "Good night," he asked smoothly, without accusation. She blinked, thrown off by his tone. What's that supposed to mean? Just asking. She narrowed her eyes. Why are you acting weird? I'm not, Elias said with a small shrug. We're just in a strange place lately. I'm trying not to push. Her tension eased at that. Just as Harriet had predicted. Well, good. Then, astonishingly, she smiled. A faint, satisfied smile. As if she believed she had the upper hand. As if she thought he was clinging to her, desperate to keep her from leaving. She had no idea what he was preparing. She had no idea her every lie was becoming the rope she would eventually hang herself with. 2 days later, the final piece of evidence arrived. Caleb called Elias just after lunch. You need to come by, he said. I have something. When Elias arrived at Caleb's office, his friend handed him an envelope. What's this? Elias asked. Something a friend pulled from building security. I told him it was important. Inside were high-resolution still photos. The clearest yet, Marissa and Dorian kissing in the elevator. Marissa entering Dorian's apartment with an overnight bag. Marissa wrapping her arms around him in the garage. Marissa laughing up at him, eyes bright with desire. And the timestamp on the final photo. The same night Noah had fainted at school. Elias's vision wavered. She wasn't just with him, Caleb said quietly. She was with him while you were rushing Noah to the hospital. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unbreakable, final. Elias finally whispered, "She won't get custody. Not after this. She won't get anything," Caleb said firmly. "And she doesn't deserve to." Elias straightened, slipping the photos back into the envelope with steady hands. "Thank you, Caleb." "For what?" "For helping me see clearly." Caleb nodded. "So, what now?" Elias looked toward the window, watching cars pass by. Each person inside moving through their own lives, unaware of the storm surging in his. "Now," he said, voice steel cold. "Now I build my case. Because Marissa wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just lying. She was abandoning her family. And Elias was done begging for scraps of the woman she used to be. He would protect Noah. He would reclaim his life. And when the time came, Marissa would face every truth she had tried to bury. Not through anger, not through confrontation, but through consequences she could never escape. The morning of the incident began with an unsettling tranquility, as if the world was trying to warn Elias of the storm gathering on the horizon. He woke early, long before the alarm, his body trained by worry rather than schedule. For a moment, he simply listened to the soft hum of the house, waiting to feel something shift inside him. But when he rose and checked on Noah, he found his son still sleeping peacefully. Curled beneath his dinosaur blanket, it almost felt normal. Almost. Marissa had left again before dawn. He heard the faint sound of her heels clicking down the hallway hours earlier, followed by the quiet closing of the front door. No goodbye, no explanation, just absence. Elias forced himself into routine, breakfast, coffee, packing Noah's lunch. He tried to pretend the world wasn't collapsing beneath him, tried to breathe normally, tried to be both mother and father, anchor and shield, but his hands trembled slightly when he buttoned Noah's coat, and he prayed his son didn't notice. "Daddy," Noah asked, rubbing his eyes, "can I bring my stuffed T-Rex today? He helps me feel better." "Of course," Elias said softly. "Take him anywhere you want." He kissed the top of his son's head, inhaling the scent of shampoo and childhood, the scent of the only thing he still trusted in the world. Noah seemed fine when Elias dropped him off at school. A little tired, maybe, a little quiet, but he smiled when Elias waved from the car, holding up his stuffed dinosaur proudly. Nothing seemed wrong, not then, but life doesn't break where you expect it to. It fractures at the weakest point, the one you don't realize is fragile until it splits open. At 11:12 a.m., Elias's phone rang. The caller ID made his heart stumble. Oak Ridge Elementary School. He answered instantly. "Hello? This is Elias." A frantic voice came through. "Mr. Ward, it's the school nurse. We need you to come immediately." Noah collapsed during recess. He passed out. Elias felt the world tilt violently. What? Is he breathing? Is he what happened? He's conscious now, but very weak. We've called an ambulance to be safe. "I'm coming," Elias said, already running to his car. "I'm on my way." He drove faster than he ever had in his life. Lights blurred past. The engine roared. His pulse hammered in his ears. Louder than sirens. Louder than fear itself. Every terrible possibility clawed at him. Had the fever returned? Had something been missed? Was his little boy suffering while he wasn't there? God? Not again. Not this. Not my son. He tried calling Marissa. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. A third time. Straight to voicemail. Elias gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Where was she? Who was she with? What mattered so much more than her collapsing child? The question wasn't new, but today, it burned like acid. When Elias arrived, paramedics were already loading Noah into the ambulance. His son looked so small on the stretcher, pale, frightened, clutching his stuffed dinosaur with trembling fingers. "Daddy," Noah whispered, eyes glassy. "I'm here," Elias said, rushing to his side. "I'm right here." He climbed into the ambulance beside him, taking his hand as the doors slammed shut. The siren wailed, slicing through the air, slicing through Elias's heart. "Daddy, don't leave," Noah murmured. "I won't. I'll stay the whole time. I promise." As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, Elias tried calling Marissa again, then again, then again. Finally, out of desperation, he texted, "Noah collapsed. He's being taken to the hospital. He needs you. Please come." The message delivered instantly. But no reply came. Hours blurred together under cold hospital lights. Nurses moved quickly. Questions flowed in rapid-fire sequence. What symptoms? How long? Medication? When did the fever return? And Elias answered every one with precision sharpened by fear. Blood tests, fluids, monitors, a doctor talking about dehydration, possible relapse, stress on the immune system. Elias kept squeezing his son's hand, whispering, "You're okay. Dad's here," even when he wasn't sure he believed it. But between every breath, every whispered reassurance, the same question circled his mind like a vulture. Where is she? He checked his phone repeatedly. Still nothing. Not a text, not a missed call, not even a curious, shallow, performative message. Minutes turned into hours. Still nothing. He felt something new rising inside him. Not shock, not devastation, but a sharp, fierce sense of clarity. She wasn't coming. She wasn't choosing them. She hadn't chosen them for a long time. And now he had proof, not just of betrayal, but abandonment, neglect, cruelty. No judge in the world would ignore this. Around 5 p.m., the attending physician approached Elias with a measured smile. "He's stable now. The fluids helped. You can take him home tonight, but watch him closely. He needs rest and low stress." Elias nodded, relief crashing into him with such force he had to steady himself. He carried Noah out to the car, buckled him gently, then drove home slowly, carefully, protecting what truly mattered. When they stepped inside the house, the living room lights were still off. The space felt hollow, untouched, indifferent. Elias laid Noah on the couch and started warming soup. As he stirred the pot, the front door opened. Marissa walked in. Her hair was styled, her makeup fresh. She wore a red dress he had never seen before, one too elegant, too alluring, too intentional for work. She froze when she saw Noah lying on the couch. "Oh," she said lightly. "He's sick again." Elias stared at her with a stillness that frightened even him. "He collapsed at school." Marissa blinked. "What?" "He fainted. An ambulance took him to the hospital." "Oh my God," she said, but her tone carried no depth, only surprise at being confronted. "Why didn't you call me?" "I did," Elias said, 14 times. She looked away. I didn't see." "You didn't see," Elias repeated slowly, the words heavy with truth. "You weren't reachable while your son was in an ambulance. You're overreacting," she snapped. "You could have handled it. You did handle it." Elias stepped closer. "This isn't about handling it," he said quietly. "This is about you not being here. Again, this is about you choosing him." His voice tightened. "Someone else over your own child." Marissa flinched. "Barely. Don't start with your accusations." "They're not accusations," Elias said calmly. "They're facts." For the first time, she seemed unsettled. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He simply looked at her with a composure, sharpened by heartbreak. "He needed you," Elias said, "and you weren't there." Marissa crossed her arms defensively. "I told you. I was busy." Elias felt something inside him finally snap, not in anger, but in resolve. He would not beg this woman to care. He would not ask her to be a mother. He would not allow her neglect to shape their son's life. He simply said, "We'll talk later." But what he meant was, "We will talk when my lawyer is present. We will talk in a courtroom. We will talk in a place where your choices have consequences." Marissa didn't know it yet, but the moment she ignored that first call from the school, the moment she chose Dorian over Noah, she had already lost everything. The air in the house felt charged the next morning, tense, brittle, as if the walls themselves braced for what was coming. Elias woke early again, not from rest, but from the lingering adrenaline of yesterday's ordeal. He went to check on Noah first. The boy slept more peacefully now, cheeks warm but no longer flushed. Elias brushed a hand over his son's hair. "You're safe," he whispered. "I'll make sure you always are." But he knew safety wasn't something he could guarantee alone, not when one parent refused to act like one. When he stepped into the hallway, Marissa was already in the kitchen. She wore a fitted navy dress, too elegant for a regular workday. She held a mug of coffee, scrolling through her phone, her expression neutral, as if nothing extraordinary had happened, as if her son hadn't collapsed, while she laughed in another man's arms. "Morning," she said lightly, not looking up. "Morning," Elias replied. His tone was polite, calm, controlled. She finally glanced at him. "How's Noah?" "He's resting," Elias answered. "You could check on him." Marissa hesitated for a fraction of a second. "I will before I leave," but she didn't move. The gap between intention and action told Elias everything he needed to know. He poured himself a coffee and leaned against the counter. For a moment, the two stood silently across from each other. The tension thickened, heavy enough to choke on. Elias wondered if she could feel it, if she sensed the ground shifting beneath her. "So," she said finally, "about last night, I think we need to talk." "Yes," Elias replied. "We do." She nodded, as if taking control of the conversation before it even started. "I just feel like you're being unreasonable. I can't be available every second. I have responsibilities. A life outside this house, outside your marriage," Elias said quietly. Her eyes flashed. "Is that what this is about? You're jealous again." "Jealous," Elias repeated. "No." "Concerned, yes, especially when your life outside this house seems to matter more than your son." Marissa scoffed and set her mug down harder than necessary. "I'm tired of this narrative you're building. You're painting me as the villain because you can't handle stress." Elias bit back the sudden urge to laugh, not out of humor, but disbelief. Her ability to twist reality was astonishing. "I'm not painting anything," he said calmly. "Your actions speak for themselves." "What actions?" "Going out, having a career, taking time for myself, lying," Elias said plainly. Marissa froze. "Lying about where you go?" he continued. "Who you're with, and why you can't pick up your phone when your son collapses." She looked at him sharply. "So you're spying on me now?" "I'm observing," he said. "There's a difference." She scoffed again, but shifted uncomfortably. Elias could see it, the flicker of panic, the realization that maybe, just maybe, her double life wasn't as concealed as she believed. He stepped closer. "Where were you yesterday between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.? he asked quietly. She stiffened. "Work. Your office said you weren't." He didn't actually know that, but the pause she made was all the answer he needed. "You can't call my office," she snapped. "That's harassment." "What do you call abandoning your child?" Elias countered, her cheeks flushed with anger. "I didn't abandon anyone. I was with him," Elias interrupted softly. Marissa's mouth opened, then closed. That fragile flicker of panic sharpened. She turned away sharply, grabbing her purse. "I'm not doing this with you." Elias watched her take a few steps before saying, "Marissa." She stopped, but didn't turn. "I know," he said, slowly. She turned her head. "Know what?" "Everything," he said. "I know who he is. I know where you go. I know what you've been doing." Her face paled. There it was, the truth breaking through her carefully constructed mask. She swallowed hard and looked away. You're imagining things. No, Elias said. Not anymore. Silence filled the room. Heavy, cold, suffocating. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin. So what now? You're going to leave me? No, Elias said softly. I'm going to protect my son. Her head snapped up. Are you threatening me? I'm stating a fact, Elias replied. Your choices have consequences. She stepped closer, her voice rising. I'm his mother. A mother shows up, Elias said. A mother doesn't disappear. A mother doesn't choose someone else while her son is in a hospital bed. That hit her, hard. He saw it in the way her chest rose sharply. She tried to recover. You don't understand anything. I've been under pressure. Pressure doesn't erase responsibility, Elias said. Pressure doesn't excuse lies. She knew she was losing ground. He could see the way her eyes darted, searching for a place to shift blame, for something to weaponize. She found it. You're doing this because you're insecure, she spat. Because you're boring, predictable. I outgrew this marriage years ago. The words sliced through him, not because they were true, but because of how eagerly she used them to hurt him. He absorbed the blow in silence. Marissa waited for him to react, to yell, to break, but he didn't. Instead, he said, "Thank you." She blinked. For what? For finally saying something honest. He stepped past her, leaving her stunned in the kitchen, because until now, she had hidden her cruelty behind excuses. But today, she had spoken plainly. She didn't love him. She didn't love the life they built. She didn't love the family she created. And now he knew without doubt, without hesitation, that she wouldn't fight for something she no longer wanted, meaning Elias would. That evening, after Noah fell asleep, Elias sat at the dining table with all the evidence spread before him. Receipts, photos, screenshots, the flash drive, notes from the hospital, documents from the school. He organized them meticulously, piece by piece, chronologically. A story of betrayal unfolding in painful clarity. A story the court would not ignore. When he finished, he emailed Harriet. I'm ready. I have everything. When can we meet? Her response came within minutes. Tomorrow morning. Bring all documentation. We move forward now. Elias exhaled, staring at the screen. This was it. The beginning of the end. Not for him, but for the marriage that had died long before he buried it. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel hollow or panicked or lost. He felt determined, resilient, steady, because the truth was no longer a beast chasing him in the dark. It was a weapon he now controlled. And Marissa, for all her confidence and calculation, had no idea that the ground beneath her feet was already splitting open. Tomorrow, everything would change. For her, for him, for Noah, and Elias was finally ready. Elias arrived at Harriet Dunn's office the next morning carrying a box small, white, and deceptively light. Inside it lay the story of the last months of his life. The betrayal, the lies, the abandonment, all captured in documents and photos that felt more like bruises than evidence. The receptionist led him to a conference room with glass walls and a long walnut table. Everything about the space felt deliberate, ordered, firm. It calmed him. Harriet entered moments later, crisp suit, hair in a tight bun, eyes sharp with intelligence. She looked like someone who didn't lose not cases, not arguments, not control. Good morning, Elias, she said as she sat. Let's get to work. He nodded and opened the box. Harriet began picking through its contents with careful, clinical precision. Receipts, she murmured. Hotel invoice. Security footage, GPS logs, texts, emails, school incident report, medical documentation. Her brows rose as she read through one after another. You weren't exaggerating. This is thorough. I didn't want any room for doubt, Elias said quietly. Harriet leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. With this amount of evidence, we have a strong path forward, not just for divorce, but for full custody. The court will not look kindly on a parent who repeatedly abandons a sick child. Elias exhaled slowly, feeling both relieved and terrified. What do we do first? Elias and patted in fast of Dazan. We file, Harriet said. But before we do, I want to prepare you. Marissa will not accept this quietly. He frowned. She doesn't even care enough to show up for Noah. Why would she fight? Because losing looks bad, Harriet replied. People like her disconnected, self-centered, narcissistic tendencies don't mind abandoning responsibility, but they despise being held accountable for it. Elias hesitated. I don't want revenge. I just want my son safe. I know, Harriet said, but she will see this as an attack. She'll blame you. She'll paint herself as the victim. He swallowed hard. What should I do when that happens? Stay calm. Let her reveal who she is. She'll crumble on her own. Harriet slid a form across the table. Sign here, and we begin. Elias picked up the pen. His hand trembled. This was the moment his marriage officially ended, not emotionally, not privately, but legally, permanently. He wasn't sure if the tremor came from grief or relief, maybe both. But he pressed the pen down anyway. When it was done, Harriet gathered everything neatly. Next, she said, we prepare the delivery of the papers. Elias frowned. Delivery. She must be served, Harriet explained. Formally, in person, and based on what you've told me about her, I suggest someone neutral handle it, a process server. Elias pictured it Marissa answering the door, expecting a package or a neighbor or even Dorian, and instead, receiving the legal beginning of the end. She won't see it coming, Harriet added. She never sees anything outside her own world, Elias murmured. Harriet offered a small, sympathetic nod. I'll schedule a custody hearing within the next week. Until then, keep collecting evidence. Don't confront her. Don't mention me. Just let her keep being herself. That won't be hard, Elias said bitterly. When Elias returned home later that afternoon, he found Marissa sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone, a bowl of untouched salad beside her. She didn't look guilty, or nervous, or conflicted. She looked comfortable, relaxed, as if nothing in their lives had shifted at all. Where were you? She asked, barely glancing up. Errands, he replied. She nodded, already losing interest. He studied her. The woman he used to love so fiercely, the woman he married, the woman he built a home with was gone. In her place sat someone colder, emptier, driven by self-indulgence rather than love. How had he not seen the transformation sooner? Marissa stretched lazily. I might go out later? To the office, Elias asked gently. She didn't notice the trap. Yes. He didn't react, but inside something clicked into place. Harriet was right. Let her keep lying. Let her keep providing him the rope. Let her hang herself with it. What about Noah? Elias asked. She scoffed. He's fine. You obsess too much. The casual dismissal hit him harder than her cruelty. Noah wasn't a task or an inconvenience. He was a child, their child. And yet Marissa treated him like background noise. Dinner will be ready in an hour, Elias said evenly. She waved a dismissive hand and returned to her phone. He walked into the kitchen, feeling an odd sense of clarity wash over him. The old Elias, the hopeful, forgiving, trusting man would have begged for her attention, pleaded for honesty, tried desperately to salvage something broken beyond repair. But this Elias, he wasn't begging for anything anymore. He was building, protecting, preparing. Later that evening, after Noah fell asleep, Elias found Marissa in the bedroom, adjusting her makeup, the red lipstick, the shimmering eyeshadow. She never wore them for him. Only for nights. She worked late. Going out? He asked. Mm-hmm, she said without turning. Big client dinner. What's the client's name? Elias asked casually. She blinked, caught off guard. What? The client. Elias repeated. Who's it for? She hesitated a moment too long. It's confidential. Of course it was. Everything about her life had become confidential. She grabbed her purse and strutted toward the door. Marissa, Elias said softly. She stopped. What? He looked at her with calm certainty. One day soon, you're going to need to explain all of this. Her expression flickered fear, confusion, but disappeared quickly. You're delusional, she snapped. Stop playing detective. You're embarrassing yourself. And with that, she left. Elias stood alone in the hallway, listening to the diminishing echo of her heels, embarrassing himself. No, he was documenting her. He was preparing. He was ensuring she couldn't twist the truth when the time came. And it was coming, sooner than she realized. The next morning, Harriet called. Papers are ready, she said. We will serve her tomorrow. Elias exhaled. Thank you. She won't handle it well, Harriet warned. Stay calm. I've been calm for too long, Elias murmured. But I won't provoke her. I know what's at stake. After the call ended, Elias closed his eyes. Tomorrow the facade would shatter. Tomorrow, she would no longer be able to hide behind lies, excuses, or charm. Tomorrow, she would learn what it felt like to face the consequences of choosing desire over duty, of choosing herself over her family, of choosing momentary pleasure over her son's well-being. Tomorrow, everything begins. He looked toward Noah's room, hearing the faint sound of toys clinking. I'm doing this for you, he whispered, because if there was one thing the last weeks had taught him, it was this. Love wasn't measured by words. It was measured by actions. And Marissa's actions had ended the marriage. Now Elias's actions would protect what mattered most. The next morning unfolded with an eerie sense of calm, an unnatural quiet, the kind that often comes before something breaks. Elias woke early, as he had for weeks now, instinctively checking on Noah before doing anything else. His son was still asleep, breathing softly, arms wrapped protectively around his stuffed T-Rex. Innocent, unaware, safe for now. In just a few hours, everything would change. He stepped into the hallway, the weight of the day already tightening across his chest. Somewhere in the house, he heard the faint clatter of dishes. Marissa was awake. He paused at the entrance to the kitchen, watching her for a moment without speaking. She moved around the room like a stranger comfortable in the space, but detached, as if this home existed only as a place to freshen up before returning to the life she was actually invested in. Her hair was perfectly curled, her nails polished, her heels sitting beside her purse on the counter. She was getting ready to leave. Again, morning, Elias said softly. She glanced at him briefly. Morning? No kiss, no warmth, not even the pretense of affection. He stepped closer, watching her stir her coffee with distracted disinterest. Big day at work. Always, she replied curtly. Still not meeting his eyes, Elias studied her carefully. Harriet had warned him that people like Marissa, those whose identities depended on control, would unravel when it was taken from them. Today would be that first unraveling. And Elias, despite everything, still felt a twinge of sorrow for the woman she used to be. Do you have any plans this afternoon? He asked casually. She froze just slightly before recovering. Meetings. Why? Just wondering. His tone remained neutral, unreadable. She went back to her coffee. Well, don't wonder. I'll be working late. Of course, Elias murmured. For a brief second, she frowned, as if trying to decipher the shift in him. But before she could ask, there was a knock at the door. A firm, professional knock. Elias's pulse quickened, not out of panic, but anticipation. This was the moment Harriet had mentioned, the moment where truth would enter their home, whether Marissa invited it or not. He stepped toward the door quietly. Are you expecting someone? Marissa asked, irritation creeping into her voice. No, Elias said. He opened the door. A man in a collared shirt and neatly pressed slacks stood there, holding a clipboard and a sealed envelope. Good morning, the man said. I'm looking for Marissa Ward. Marissa stiffened. That's me. The man offered a sympathetic half smile, one trained through countless uncomfortable encounters. You've been served. He handed her the envelope. Marissa blinked. What? Served with what? Divorce papers. Ma'am, custody filing included. You'll need to sign for receipt. This isn't. Her face drained of color. There must be some mistake. No mistake, ma'am. The man tapped his clipboard. Signature. Please. She looked at Elias, eyes wide with disbelief, then fury. You did this? Elias remained silent, refusing to break composure. Her hands trembled as she scribbled her name. The server tore off the receipt and handed it back. Have a good day, he said softly before walking away. The door clicked shut behind him. For a long, the breathless moment, there was nothing but silence. Marissa stared at the envelope, as though it might burst into flames. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wild. What is this? She demanded. You know what it is, Elias said calmly. You're filing for divorce. Her voice rose sharply. Are you insane? No, he said quietly. Just finally awake. She slammed the envelope onto the counter. This is ridiculous. You can't take my son away from me. Elias met her eyes, and for the first time in months, he felt no fear. No doubt, only certainty. You already gave him away, he said softly. Every time he needed you, and you chose someone else. Marissa's jaw clenched. This is about last night. You're upset. You're being emotional. This is about every night, Elias corrected. About every lie, every absence, every time you walked out the door without looking back. Her breath hitched. She wasn't used to being confronted, or challenged, or held accountable. You blindsided me, she snapped. You didn't even talk to me first. I tried, Elias said. For months I tried, but you were too busy with him. Her eyes flashed with panic. Who? Don't insult me, Marissa. Not now. His voice remained even, but she flinched as if struck. She looked away, crossing her arms tightly. So what? You think you can just end our marriage because you're insecure? It ended, Elias said. You ended it the moment you chose someone else over your family. I didn't choose anyone, she shot back. I have the receipts. His voice dropped softly, dangerously. The photos, the emails, the videos, I have everything. Her face went white. Who helped you? She whispered. Was it Caleb? That snake. This isn't about Caleb, Elias interrupted. This is about accountability. She shook her head, tears forming not from heartbreak, but from fear. The fear of losing. You can't take Noah from me. I'm his mother. And I'm his father, Elias said. The one who's been here. Every day, every night, every fever, every fear. The court will see that. You're doing this out of spite. She spat. You're trying to punish me. No, Elias said quietly. I'm trying to protect our son. Her voice cracked, not with vulnerability, but with rage. I will destroy you in court. You won't, Elias said calmly, because you can't defend your choices. Her breathing quickened. I'll get a lawyer. You should, Elias said. You'll need one. Marissa looked around the kitchen, as if the world had suddenly tilted. I can't believe you would do this to me. Elias took a slow breath. Marissa, I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. She stared at him, trembling. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house, slamming the door so violently the frame shuddered. Elias remained still for several seconds, absorbing the weight of what had happened. The air felt different now, lighter, sharper, honest. He walked slowly to Noah's room and peeked inside. His son was still asleep. Oblivious to the war unfolding in the next room, Elias whispered, "We're going to be okay." Then, for the first time since the betrayal had begun, he believed it. Marissa had spent months escaping consequences. Today, they finally caught up with her. And this was only the beginning of her downfall. The courthouse felt colder than Elias expected. as if justice required lower temperatures to stay sharp. He arrived early with Harriet, carrying 2 folders of documents, though she had told him he wouldn't need to speak unless the judge addressed him directly. Still, he wanted to be prepared. Every detail mattered today. Every truth he had collected over months would finally have a place to stand. Harriet glanced over at him as they walked through security. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Elias murmured. "You've done everything right," she said. "Stay calm. Let her unravel. Trust the truth." He nodded, absorbing the reassurance, even as nerves tugged at his breath. Inside the courtroom, a few people shuffled seats, whispering, waiting for their own cases. Elias and Harriet chose a bench near the front. The judge had a reputation for impatience, strictness, and a dedication to protecting children above all else. Harriet had insisted on filing here for that reason. 10 minutes later, the doors opened again. Marissa entered with a man Elias didn't recognize. Her lawyer's sleek suit, polished demeanor, the smug expression of someone paid too much and trusted too easily. Marissa herself looked strained. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the slight tremor in her hands. She saw Elias and froze. For a second, something flickered in her expression: anger, shame, fear. Then it hardened into the cold, defiant mask she'd worn for weeks. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently. The man's eyes scanned Elias and Harriet, then narrowed. Elias didn't know what Marissa was telling him, but he suspected the truth. She didn't expect this to be real. She thought he was bluffing. She thought no one would ever hold her accountable. The bailiff called their names. The hearing began. Judge Sinclair was a woman in her early 60s, with steely gray hair and a presence that silenced the room simply by existing. She looked at the file in front of her, then up at the 2 parties. "This is the custody petition for Elias Ward versus Marissa Ward," she said clearly. "We will begin with opening statements." Petitioner. Harriet rose smoothly. "Your Honor, we will show a clear pattern of parental neglect on behalf of Mrs. Ward, including documented instances of absence during medical emergencies, failure to respond to calls from school officials, repeated abandonment of the minor child's care, and substantial evidence of extramarital conduct contributing to emotional distress within the home environment." Marissa flinched. Her attorney stood next. "Your Honor, my client disputes any claims of neglect. She is a hard-working mother under significant pressure, and Mr. Ward is exaggerating circumstances to punish her. We believe this petition stems from insecurity and emotional instability." Elias stared forward, steady. Harriet warned him this would happen, that Marissa would weaponize victimhood, reframe irresponsibility as ambition, betrayal as independence. But Harriet's hand tapped twice on the table, a silent reminder: truth wins when lies grow desperate. Evidence presentation began. Harriet approached with the calm precision of a surgeon. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit A. Phone records showing Mr. Ward's attempts to contact Mrs. Ward during their son's 2 medical emergencies." The judge scanned the papers. "Mrs. Ward, are you disputing these timestamps?" Marissa shifted. I didn't hear the phone. I was in a meeting," Harriet added. Exhibit B, a statement from Oak Ridge Elementary's nurse detailing multiple attempts to reach Mrs. Ward while the child was unconscious. The judge's gaze sharpened. "Mrs. Ward." Marissa's throat bobbed. "I can't be everywhere all the time." "You are expected," the judge replied coolly, "to be reachable when your child collapses." Marissa's attorney attempted to interject. "Your Honor, we argue that Mr. Ward is using these isolated incidents." "Isolated," Harriet cut in. Exhibit C, hospital admission records from 2 separate dates. Both times, the father was present alone. Both times, the mother was unreachable. Marissa's attorney tried again. "She is a working professional. So is Mr. Ward," Harriet countered. Yet, he never failed to appear. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Elias watched Marissa's composure falter. Her eyes darted between her lawyer, the evidence, and the judge. Her breathing quickened. Harriet wasn't finished. Exhibit D, she continued, reaching for the flash drive, security footage obtained legally from the Rosemont Avenue complex. Marissa stiffened violently. No, you can't. Yes, we can, Harriet said, and we will. The screen flickered to life. The footage played, Marissa entering the garage, Dorian waiting, their embrace, their kiss, their departure into the private elevator. Timestamp. The same night Noah lay in a hospital bed. Gasps filled the courtroom. Marissa's face drained of color, as if her blood had fled all at once. Her attorney pinched the bridge of his nose. He hadn't known. Elias realized that instantly. Judge Sinclair leaned forward, expression freezing into something colder than disappointment, something close to contempt. Mrs. Ward, the judge said slowly, your counsel argues these are isolated incidents. This tape, however, shows a pattern of behavior that starkly contradicts the responsibilities expected of a parent. Do you dispute this footage? Marissa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then, it's not what it looks like, she whispered. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Harriet spoke gently, almost sympathetically, though her eyes were sharp as glass. Your Honor, Exhibit E, email correspondence between Mrs. Ward and Mr. Hale, explicitly detailing multiple romantic encounters during work hours and evenings when she reported being at the office. She handed printed copies to the bailiff. Judge Sinclair scanned them. Her expression hardened further. Mrs. Ward, the judge said, your behavior demonstrates consistent neglect and dishonesty. The court's priority is the welfare of the child, and from what I see, Mr. Ward has been the stable, present, responsible parent. Marissa's eyes filled with tears, not from remorse, but panic. No, she said, voice cracking. Please, he's trying to take my son. I love Noah. I do. Judge Sinclair watched her with a look that pierced straight through the performance. Love, the judge said coldly, is demonstrated by action, not lip service. When your son needed you, you were elsewhere. Marissa's breath hitched. Elias sat still, steady. He felt no joy in her humiliation, but he felt justice. Given the evidence presented, Judge Sinclair declared, I am granting temporary full custody to Mr. Ward. Mrs. Ward, you will receive supervised visitation pending further evaluation. The gavel struck. The decision landed like thunder. Marissa gasped the sound of someone losing an entire future in one breath. She turned to Elias with wild, desperate eyes. You can't do this, she whispered. You can't take him from me. Elias finally spoke. I didn't, he said softly. You did. Her lips trembled. She looked like she wanted to scream, but the courtroom setting trapped her, shrinking her into someone small, powerless, exposed. Harriet gathered the folders calmly. Well done, she whispered to Elias. Your son is safe. Elias exhaled, the weight of months lifting slowly, painfully, but undeniably. He didn't win. He didn't triumph. He simply reclaimed what should never have been endangered. Noah. And with that, the end of this chapter was finally within reach. The days following the custody ruling felt different, lighter, calmer, as if the violent storm had finally passed and left behind the promise of clear skies. Elias found himself waking up without the familiar knot of dread in his stomach. For the first time in months, the house felt like home again, not a battlefield of silent resentments and lies. Noah adjusted more quickly than Elias expected. Children, Elias realized, often had better instincts than adults. He clung to Elias more, leaned into his shoulder, hugged him without reason. There was a new softness in Noah's eyes, a sense of safety that had been missing for far too long. One morning, while eating cereal at the kitchen table, Noah looked up and asked, Daddy, are things better now? Elias paused, surprised by the question, but nodded gently. Yes, buddy. Things are better. Noah smiled. A small but genuine smile. We don't fight anymore. Elias swallowed. No, we don't. But the truth was, the calm in the house existed because one storm had been removed. Marissa's absence was no longer an open wound. It was a closed door. A door Elias wasn't planning to reopen. Still, loose ends remained. He knew Marissa would come. The judge had granted her supervised visitation, but she hadn't scheduled a single session. Instead, she had sent 3 short texts over the past week. We need to talk. Eights, this isn't fair. I deserve to see my son. No acknowledgement of her actions. No apology. No ownership. Just blame. Just entitlement. Harriet advised him to avoid direct communication. Let her speak through legal channels, she had said. It protects you and Noah. Elias agreed. Boundaries were not revenge. They were protection. But then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, a knock sounded at the front door. Elias froze. No one was expected. He wiped his hands on a dish towel, asked Noah to sit tight, and walked toward the door. Through the frosted glass, he saw a familiar silhouette, rigid shoulders, crossed arms, heels planted as if trying to reclaim a territory she no longer owned. Marissa. He opened the door only slightly. What are you doing here? Elias asked, voice calm but firm. Marissa's eyes were red-rimmed, her hair slightly disheveled. This wasn't the polished, untouchable woman she'd become. She looked unraveled. Please, she whispered. Let me in. Elias shook his head. We can talk here. She flinched at the boundaries but didn't push. I lost everything, Elias. He didn't reply. I lost my job. She continued, voice cracking. They said I violated company policy by getting involved with a consultant, Dorian. He ended things. He said he wasn't looking for anything serious, that I misunderstood. Elias felt no satisfaction in hearing it. Betrayal didn't deserve celebration. It only deserved closure. He was using me, Marissa whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought he cared. I thought. She broke off, burying her face in her hands. For a moment, Elias simply let her cry, but he did not reach out. Compassion did not require closeness. When she finally looked up, her voice was small. I've made mistakes, Elias. I know that, but I need to see Noah. He nodded once. Schedule a supervised visitation through the proper channels. That wasn't what she wanted to hear. Her expression twisted with frustration. I'm his mother. Yes, Elias said gently. And that comes with responsibility. You didn't show it. She stepped closer. He needs me. He needed you when he collapsed at school, Elias said softly. He needed you in the hospital. He needed you every night you left to be with someone else. She winced as though struck. He cried for you, Elias continued. He asked why you didn't come. I didn't have an answer. Marissa covered her mouth. Her breath stuttered. I messed up, she whispered. But I can fix it. You can try, Elias replied. But not by pretending nothing happened. Not by walking in here like you still live this life. Her facade crumbled completely. I'm sorry, Elias. I really am. I was selfish. I thought I was missing out on something. Something exciting. But it was nothing. I threw everything away for nothing. Elias's eyes softened, but his boundaries did not. You didn't throw everything away for nothing, he said. You threw it away because you stopped valuing it. Marissa looked broken, but broken didn't erase choices. Broken didn't erase consequences. She wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. Can I at least see him? Elias nodded slowly. I'll ask if he wants to come to the door. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him briefly. Noah looked up at him from the living room floor, crayons scattered around him. Who was it? Daddy. Your mom, Elias said gently. Noah's expression shifted surprise, then caution, then something like worry. Does she want to yell? Elias's heart twisted. No, Buddy, she wants to see you, but only if you want to. Noah hesitated. Will you stay with me? Always. Noah nodded slowly. Okay. Elias took his son's hand and opened the door again. When Marissa saw Noah, her face crumpled. Hi, baby. Noah pressed closer to Elias's leg. Hi, Mom. She knelt. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I haven't been a good mom. Noah didn't answer, but he didn't pull away. When she reached out to gently touch his hand, Elias stayed beside him, calm, solid, protective. Marissa wiped more tears. I want to do better. I promise. Noah's voice was small. Okay. She closed her eyes, as if absorbing the moment, then stood slowly. Can I see him again soon? Really see him? That's up to the court, Elias reminded. She nodded, defeated. I'll follow the rules. For once, he believed her. As she walked away, Elias watched her go with a mixture of sadness and relief. She wasn't the villain of his story. She was the cautionary figure, the one who lost herself chasing illusions, the one who paid the price of abandoning what truly mattered. When he closed the door, Noah looked up at him. Are you okay, Daddy? Elias knelt and pulled him into a hug. I am now. Noah hugged him back. Me too. Elias felt a quiet sense of peace wash through him, something he hadn't felt in years. Freedom, clarity, strength. Later that evening, as Noah napped on the couch, Elias sat with a journal, writing down everything that had happened, not out of anger, but out of gratitude for survival, for recovery, for becoming the father his son needed. Sometimes, endings weren't punishments. Sometimes, they were invitations. Invitations to rebuild, to protect, to heal. Elias watched his son breathe softly and whispered, We're starting over, buddy, and this time, we're going to do it right. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon. Inside, a new life was just beginning. In life, betrayal often feels like the end of everything, a collapse of trust, a wound that seems impossible to heal. But sometimes, betrayal is not a door closing. It is a path redirecting us toward what truly matters. Elias learned that heartbreak doesn't define a person. Resilience does. He discovered that protecting those who rely on you is a form of love deeper than any romantic promise. Marissa's downfall revealed a truth many ignore. When we neglect the people who love us most, we risk losing them permanently. But when we choose integrity, responsibility, and compassion, we build foundations that cannot be shaken. If you've ever faced betrayal, remember, the pain is real, but so is the strength waiting on the other side. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more powerful stories that touch the heart.